when I actually started, like I actually didn't get that affected mentally because I didn't realize the severity of it. And I thought, okay, maybe I have like a few months off. We didn't really know the seriousness of the situation, first of all.
Right.
People were making memes, uh, like it's the end of the world. My experience was slightly, different. Like I didn't panic right in the beginning, maybe panicked somewhere in the middle, especially after the second wave was very scary.
This is the Radio City Indie Exchange, and guess who's joining me? We have a star. And when I say a star, clearly, I mean, as someone who has been ardently listening to artists, for over 5.5 years, um, the last couple of months, especially, has given me immense joy to see some amazing artists and especially some amazing women being featured at Times Square. And we have one such star right here with us, Hanita Bhambri. Welcome, girl.
Hello. Thank you for such a beautiful introduction.
The pleasure is all mine. So, for those of our viewers who aren't aware, Hanita was featured at Times Square recently because she lent background. She lent backing vocals as 1/3 of the Rata Chill mix, where she collaborated with Tanish Bakchi and with Jumir Nautiyal. And clearly, as much as the original song was well received and it's really breaking all charts, the chill mix also has really gotten a lot of people to finally notice and take take to Hanita's talents. So firstly, girl, congratulations. It's
Thank you.
supremely a proud moment. I mean, personally also, because I have been following your music for a year and a half actually, ever since I
Mhm.
first heard Home Alone. And I think a huge part of the connect that I have with you is, through all the wonderful conversations that we have exchanged on Instagram.
Mhm.
Clearly, social media, in the age of pandemic, has proven to be such a boon for us.
Mhm.
Clearly, I don't think so. There's ever any other way I could think of connecting with you, if not for social media. So, firstly, I really thank you for having made so much of a difference in the lives of so many through your art and through the wonderful posts that you keep putting on Instagram. Of course, through the course of this conversation, we will be looking at the multiple facets of your journey and of you as a person. But before we get going there, Hanita, I just want to ask you, how do you look at the last 1.5 year in terms of how has it emboldened you? Has it empowered you as an artist?
I think the pandemic has been like a time for a lot of growth and introspection for me personally. And in terms of my music, I feel like the songwriting automatically evolves to its times. Like if we see people around us who are going through so much, we see all of our friends who are going through so much. And um, sometimes, like whenever I would write my songs earlier, it would just be out of personal experiences, whatever was going on in my life. But now all of those stories kind of came together and lent itself to my songwriting. I wouldn't say that it has emboldened me. I think it definitely has made me more kind to people around me. Because, with everything that's so uncertain, with everything that's uh, like there's little to control over, all of our lives. We actually realize that we have no sense of control. And to experience that feeling, it really kind of softens your heart a little bit, makes you more empathetic, makes you kinder. uh, and I think that's what's happened to me, both as a person and in my art form as well.
What is remarkable, Hanita, is how, as artists, especially, I have always wanted to ask this to artists, personally, not in the capacity as as a media person, but in the capacity of just another human being. I've always wanted to ask artists that, how do you manage to create that art, or how do you manage to even bring yourself to wanting to put out something out there, despite the receiver at the other end having no idea about what you are going through within yourself. Of course, with the pandemic, a lot of avenues for artists in general, it all came to a standstill. So many multiple artists had announced shows. There were album tours and gigs, everything that so many things that were lined up. Of course, it happened a little before summers came in, and usually that's the time, that's when artists are more active, and they're very proactive about their sources, their avenues, and everything was put to it all came down to a pause. First of all, how those initial days have been, how did you take to processing them? Because I believe, Hanita, I was just watching Ankush's stories in the last couple of hours, and where he was talking about how sometimes a dip in engagement can be extremely heartbreaking for an artist. When your numbers start taking a dip, that constant pressure to create and to engage, that fear of irrelevance can really seep in, especially for artists. So how did you decide that you are not going to let that affect you? Just to shortly summarize it, Hanita, how did you take to processing this development, and what was your conscious efforts to not let that affect you?
Honestly, I've always been relentlessly optimistic as a person, even though I would say the year kind of broke that down multiple times. So in the beginning, we didn't really know the seriousness of the situation. First of all,
right.
People were making memes like it's the end of the world. Memes were happening, and there were these days where you would see these videos that day 4 of quarantine, people are making all these funny videos. There was this Dalgona coffee phase, and people were sharing their quarantine routines. So I don't think any of us realized how severe it was and how long it's going to stay. We thought that it's going to come and go. So when it actually started, I actually didn't get that affected mentally, because I didn't realize the severity of it, and I thought, okay, maybe I have a few months off where I wouldn't be performing shows, so might as well use this time to connect with my audience on social media. There are so many people who are feeling the same kind of anxieties as I am, so why not do that?
Right.
So I started doing the series called 21 Days, 21 Songs during the first phase of lockdown, and I'm gained a lot of loyal listeners and loyal followers who still are with me on this journey. So my experience was slightly different. I didn't panic right in the beginning, maybe panicked somewhere in the middle, especially after the second wave was very scary.
Rightly said, Hanita. I think the second wave especially was extremely scary, because so many people in close quarters and in our immediate friend circle and even in our immediate family were being claimed by this pandemic. And it is extremely commendable on your part as artists, because even during the second phase, where a lot of artists were still on the slightly hesitant path to actively use their social media clout to call for help and to help make it easier for people. I think you were one of the very few musicians I personally know who actively put out SOS calls on on their stories, who really helped bridge helplines and other sources of communication at that moment. You really came out all guns blazing during that time of emergency. I must say, Hanita, it's extremely remarkable. So please accept my heartfelt gratitude for that. I have to say, another thing that I came across as to what you did was you really made it a conscious effort to once in a while put out these little notes of affirmation and consolation that was so necessary, because I think the second wave really made a lot of us anxious. Everyone's panic mode was off the roof. every day you would put out these really sweet notes, little notes on what we can do, how we can help in making the world a better place. That personally stemmed from a place where, like you rightly said at the start of this interview, that it came from a place where the pandemic had kind of humbled you, had softened you, had kind of made you more compassionate towards situations and people around you.
Yeah, definitely. And also it made me feel that, like my purpose when I started music was to help people. Like that, it wasn't to gain fame, it wasn't to earn loads of money, even though those are like ancillary outcomes that happen eventually. My purpose was to help people, give them comfort, the same way that music did for me. And for very long, I just used music as that one tool to do that. And like I told you, I've been having vocal issues, and I couldn't really then do this whole songwriting thing, or perform songs for people. I did this thing also called like what song would make your day better.
Yeah.
On stories, I would sing people's songs. And since I was myself so affected because of my health, I thought, what if I use something else to help people, something else that makes them feel, brings them a little joy in their
Right.
day, makes them feel a little less alone. And that came from that place, that if I'm feeling so anxious, what about the people whose families are affected right now? Thankfully, like that's what my family was safe. And whatever SOS calls that I was doing, I felt like that was bare minimum. That's like, forget about me as an artist, like as a human being, that was the bare minimum I could do.
Right.
And with my posts and everything also, I just wanted to give someone hope at the end of the day, that that sometimes we need to hear certain words. And I kind of used to kind of think that what would I want to hear in this situation, and then I would write that the moment someone reads those words, they want to not give up their fight.
Right.
They don't have certain hope. So it just came from that place more than anywhere else, where I couldn't use music. So I thought, there are 100 different ways of helping people, even if I can't help, on ground. Whatever I can do, whatever little I can do, I want to do.
I mean, you put it across so well, Hanita. It reminds me of the post I was talking about this morning to an artist manager, where there's this wonderful post on Instagram, I'm sure you've come across, where when you read that 13th book, when you watch that 50th show, or when you listen to that maybe the 100th song, please remember that in your darkest hours you turn towards artists. And firstly, I want to ask, as a musician, as a singer songwriter yourself, personally for me, as someone who is so fond of pop culture, as someone who digs hugely into books and movies and music, I know that the pandemic gave me that kind of privilege where I knew I could access a lot of material. I had the kind of space to accommodate, make up more time for all of that. As an artist, when your avenues are taken away from you because of the pandemic, how do you ensure you still stay connected with your craft? What is it, what did you do? Like, did you gain any additional music lessons, or did you look up interviews or any kind of seminars that helped you stay connected with your craft?
I don't really think I lost touch with my craft because of the pandemic. In fact, like it brought me a little bit more closer because of, like I said, like it brought me a lot of growth and introspection.
Right.
So despite not being performing or whatever, like because songwriting for me is such a personal thing, like I don't really create around people. Like a lot of people, they have this entire band, or they're writing with their producer and all of that. Like for me, songwriting is so personal, and my craft is so personal that like I didn't really lose touch with it.
Yeah. No, my question was not about it was not coming from the ground of you having lost touch with your craft, Hanita. But of course, sometimes there's that on days when you feel slightly sometimes in our respective when everyone's doing their respective things, that existential dread, sometimes does seep in. There's always that little disconnect somewhere. Self-doubt looms really large. Or you sometimes you stumble upon a creative block. So in that case, like, what are the conscious efforts does one do to ensure that they're keeping up, they're catching up rather?
Just taking care of my mental and physical health in those days. Like if I am not able to do something creatively, I don't punish myself. First of all, like it's okay to not create 24/7. Like honestly, like I just I like write down my entire day. Like I also struggle a lot with anxiety personally myself. So just making a list and then sticking to it, that okay, from this time to this time we're going to do this, especially because artists don't have like a routine. We don't have to go and go to the office, so these can become very disorganized, and they can like kind of merge into each other if you let them happen. And anxiety can sometimes do that to you, where you literally cannot get up from the bed. So like I had to take a conscious effort where I was like, okay, I'm going to meditate right when I wake up, to just clear out my mind, and I'm gonna like force myself to exercise. Even if I don't want to exercise, I'm gonna exercise. And I started like focusing on something else that brought me joy, which was like things like painting or cooking, like things that weren't coming from a place where I want to be the master of it, but things that brought me joy. So and it ultimately did seep into as you would see, like all my notes and stuff there, I design and I make all the drawings myself, and I venture into digital art as well. So it came into my work eventually, but didn't start off with that purpose that hey, I'm going to learn design so as to showcase it on social media. I didn't come from that place. It just came from a place of finding that connection and finding that joy. And creativity is like that, like it is inspired by other things, as long as you're feeling better, as long as you're taking care of yourself. And sometimes self-care isn't easy. Self-care doesn't always look like long bubble baths. Sometimes self-care looks like sitting with a book, reading about your attachment style and crying all day. Just mourning a version of yourself that could have existed had you known this fact about yourself sooner. Self-care isn't always pretty. It can look very messy, and that's okay. But as long as you're growing, as long as you're focused on becoming a better you, it's okay if you're not creative 24/7.
Absolutely, so rightly said, because this just reminds me of another post on Instagram that I came about early on last year in the first phase of pandemic, where somebody said it's okay if you get out of the lockdown without having acquired a skill, without having learned something new, because there are certain idiots out there who have turned this pandemic also into a productivity contest. So I think you so rightly put it. It's just something that, as long as it's organic and it's not something you're forcing upon yourself, as long as it just helps you stay sane, but not necessarily where you have to prove a point and flaunt about it. I think that's so so well put, Hanita, because unfortunately many of our artists, like this has been one of my talking points in most of my interviews in recent times, is a lot of artists, I feel they lay unnecessary emphasis upon metrics, especially. So a lot of times how many YouTube views has a song acquired, or how many Spotify streams has the song acquired. Do you really think that metrics in any way determines the success or the engagement of a song?
The numbers or the views, definitely they give you a sense of validation. Because if an artist is putting out any form of art, they want it to be listened to. They want as many people as possible, that this song reaches as many people as possible. And it definitely gives you that sense of validation and confidence that okay, like I'm on the right path. But it cannot be the sole determinant. And I feel like, a lot of artists, especially when they get to that stage where they have millions of listeners and millions of streams, they say metrics don't matter. And to a younger or an emerging artist, that can feel a little patronizing, because, they are trying to prove their place in the world.
Yeah.
They're trying to fight this battle with their family. They have to
Yes.
answer a million questions from their friends that what are you doing with your life?
Right.
So it's a little patronizing to say that, views don't matter, do whatever you want to do. They matter, but they're not the only thing that matter, And the fight that you have in terms of, how you measure success, it should only be with your own self. Like
Yes.
if today you're getting 10,000 listeners, and you release a song and you get to 12, then you're still growing, you're becoming more and more successful. Don't
Right.
compare it to someone else. Some other artist comes in and they have 50,000 listeners all of a sudden. If you start comparing those, then it becomes like a rabbit hole. It's
Right.
okay to monitor your progress in terms of numbers, to kind of take that as feedback and not as a personal comment on you. No one is commenting whether you're good or bad. It's just feedback that, okay, this is something people enjoy listening to, this is something people don't enjoy listening to as much. Doesn't make the song worse or better.
Yeah.
It's just that at this moment in time, people like listening to the song more. And as you know, with music, songs blow up 10 years later, 15 years later. It's just about the timing of that song. So doesn't make it a bad song.
Right.
So measuring success only by views is not that fruitful, and comparison is definitely the worst. It's the worst thing you can subject yourself to.
Yeah.
As an artist, you just just feel stuck. I don't know if you know about this, about Megadeth and Metallica, where this person's the guitarist of the band, he could not be happy because he was constantly comparing himself to the success of Metallica,
Yep.
Because even though being one of the top rock metal bands, still being a part of it, he could not be happy. So if it's comparison doesn't get us anywhere, and you have to personally define what success is for you. Like I told you, what success means to me is to help people, to feel my music is reaching out to people and it's comforting people. Whenever I receive any kind of messages that, hey, I listened to the song or I sent it to a friend who was going through something, that really lifts up my spirit, that okay, whatever I'm doing is worthwhile. And of course, numbers and stuff, they give you a positive validation. It helps you justify your choice of career, that okay, whatever I'm doing is making a difference. It's giving me something in society to kind of on a name. It really helps in that sense, especially in Indian society. It's very, very difficult. I cannot show them these messages and say that okay, because they still measure success in terms of fame or money.
Yeah.
So even in monetary sense, I personally, I want to live a life that's not luxurious but comfortable. I want to earn enough money from my music, doing something I love, and I'm able to live a comfortable life. So that is my term, my definition of financial success. For someone it might be having a beach house but that's okay, whatever floats your boat. And but as an artist, it's very important to then not compare that okay, the person who started 2 years later than me has a bigger house.
Right.
As long as you're content with whatever you're doing, whatever you're having, because that's endless. I feel like money, success, fame, it's never enough. So
absolutely. So well,
and important to kind of define it.
Hanita, in the last 1.5 year, the beautiful collaborations that I've seen between artists. Firstly, I think the pandemic definitely has brought the fraternity closer, because we have seen some tremendous collaborations happening. Let's take Yuli for example. Of course, you've had some amazing songs with Soham Malik, with Zaid, and you even shared a very very beautiful reel with Kamakshi, where you both did a cover together. And of course, the Rata Chill mix that came about a fortnight back. Clearly, it's been quite a very happening year that way in terms of collaborations. Do you really think now that artists in general are less about? I mean, it's kind of okay. Artists genuinely want to feel a lot more. A lot much closer to each other. They want to feel a lot more inclusive without labels. And when I say without labels, I have to revisit a post by a leading radio station some months back where they really removed out these lists about top indie artists you should listen to. I know it was completely a male dominant list until a lot
I
of
know what you're talking about.
a lot of
I commented on that.
Yes. No, not just you. So many wonderful musicians we know, from Kamakshi to Abhilasha to there were plenty who voiced their dissent under that post and said that hey, we don't. I mean, do we not figure out here? And of course, soon after that, they put out a list saying female musicians that you must follow.
Yeah.
And immediately, again to that also, there was a reaction where I think Abhilasha expressed that it is not about, we are not looking for tokenism here. I mean, we never say, oh, male actors or female actors you should follow. We just say actors whose performances you must look out for. So similarly, why bracket musicians also under such labels? So I do you think now with the kind of collaborations that have come through in the last 1 year, there is a sense of unity, a lot of artists wanting to look out for each other's best interests and having each other's back?
Yeah, I think like the atmosphere has become more collaborative and competitive, which is very refreshing. Up until I think 2 or 3 years back, it wasn't so. People are very very competitive. They won't even share each other's music. So it's definitely a good step. And in terms of inclusivity, I feel like we still have a very very long way to go. I read this statistic where it said that even the algorithm after a point in time, it starts only pushing male artists because people start skipping female artists the moment they see their name. So I feel like I wouldn't say the world, because the world itself, like you would see the most popular artists that come to mind are all female like in the world music space. When it comes to internationally, who's the most visible, like I could, like, the moment you think of who are the most popular artists in US, for example, everything they're all female. Like most of them are female. Only then you start counting down, okay, who are the male artists that are successful. So it's not the same in India, because people care more about what a man has to say than what a woman has to say.
Right,
it's the truth. It's the truth. They don't want to hear a woman's story. They don't want to hear what a woman has to say, what her narrative is, what her story is. And you would see that especially in Bollywood, like now things are changing a lot, but like even if you put yourself like 5 or 6 years back, you would see that there would be these songs that are completely in male pitch, and women have to sing this ridiculously high pitch that's not comfortable. No consideration given to how a woman is supposed to sing this, and they're singing it anyway. Something that isn't for their range, isn't for their voice. They're singing it anyway because that's work. Like, we have to do our work. Yeah, it's a long way to go, like it's a long ongoing fight. And I feel like there's so many talented, like some of my friends, like you mentioned, Kamakshi, Abhilasha, Mali, Aditi, Ramesh, like everyone is putting out their best work, but it's not getting the kind of recognition that it deserves.
Right.
Like we would say like a man, like I wouldn't call them mediocre, but even if a guy was mediocre in terms of their talent, they would still get more of a push than a woman who's doing everything, who's doing social media right, who's putting out the best music, who's consistent, doing everything right. They would still not get that push, and that's really really sad. But I mean, we can do whatever best we can. Especially like, when, say, for example, like I am today on Times Square, that is a huge feat for not just independent artists, but also like women independent artists, that,
Absolutely,
like
yes.
we're not just under a women in indie banner. We're under a banner that is not for tokenism, like you said. It's not defined on my gender that I'm up there.
Yes.
And uh, what I can do is then, lift other women artists along with me. Like a lot of times this is what happens, that when an indie artist kind of breaks out internationally, they stop even looking at other independent artists from India, because they're like,
Right.
I'm way above all this. So it comes down to us, that whoever are kind of pioneering this space, whoever are slowly rising to the top, they kind of take the onus on themselves, and they start kind of pushing, other women, because ultimately, like, only we got our backs.
Exactly.
Uh, Despite all collaborations and all of that space, ultimately, we kind of really know the struggles that we face, the societal judgment that we face.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like up to us to kind of bring all women up along with us.
Yeah, like you rightly said, I'm sure it's a long way to go, but it's not an impossible feat. I'm sure, step by step, one day at a time. I'm sure it's just gonna get better. I mean, like you said, I think both of us are positive and optimistic about that. Before I conclude, Hanita, I think with having collaborated with Tanishka and Jubin, who are from the common man's perception, from a listener's perception, they're very, very mainstream in their in their influences, in their process, um, while collaborating with a totally contrasting school of music. What have you what have you understood about their understanding now? Do you feel that the lines between mainstream and independent are, have they blurred? Are they blurring? Do you think mainstream is now a lot more informed about and what's
Mhm.
happening in the indie space? Do you think somewhere the mainstream has also woken up to the credibility of the independent space?
Yeah, I think so. Like, especially in terms of, like my interactions with Jubin and Tanishk, like there was no air about them that, we are Bollywood artists. And
Right.
even in the creation space, like Tanishk told me, like, you do the song the way you want to do. Whatever you want to change, you can change. However you want to sing it, we want Hanita to sing it. We don't want to dictate how you sing it.
Right.
Because, and that was so refreshing, that just takes so much pressure off. Because like ultimately I was feeling that, yeah, I'm Indian, I'm not sung in Punjabi, this is Bollywood kind of song, and I expected to sing a certain way. And that kind of just made me feel so relaxed, that I can do whatever I want, however I want to sing it. And it was a popular song, like a lot of people are very protective of that
Right.
like, this is my image, or this is my this. And we were just like, we like your voice, we heard Jalpari, it's a great song, so I mean, we trust you, you do whatever you want to do. So I think, like, mainstream is definitely more respectful of independent artists. They are way more open to our ideas. They want us to, like, truly collaborate and not just collaborate for the name of it. And I think, like, eventually, we'll find, especially with OTT growing a lot,
Yeah.
we're going to find more and more independent songwriters finding their music in movies and TV series and everything. So yeah, I'm looking forward to, like, a true amalgamation over the next few years.
Well, on that optimistic note, I really want to thank you, Hanita, for sparing the time out to talk to us. And you've really been inspiring many with your music, with just the way you are as a person. And I wish you all the very best. Thank you once again for joining us this evening. And hopefully, I get to see you very soon in person.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Great talking to you too. Thank you.
Radio